Coco Chanel once said that fashion is not something that exists in dresses only. Fashion is in the sky, in the street. Fashion has to do with ideas, the way we live, what is happening. Throughout the 1900s, the world of fashion experienced constant change. Accessories, colors, lengths, silhouettes, makeup, and hairstyles have all had a significant impact on society and women's roles. The biggest influencer of all of these changes in fashion is the world around us, and what significant events are taking place and global developments have been introduced to our world. We will examine what it is that inspires these changes in style and what changes have actually occurred over the last 100 years and how they impact society. Between the years of 1900 to 1930, female roles were dramatically changed. Females were now being seen out in public, participating in sports, working jobs, and even traveling. This led to an increase in functionality and simplicity in their wardrobe. For example, pockets and buttons were now on trend and found in many dresses. As you can see in my visual representation, skirts were long, except for in the 20s, when skirts were short for the first time. According to Gertrude Leonard's book, Fashion, the evolution of form was one of the aspects of change. Hair was cut short for the first time since the 18th century, and many women started to wear hats with feathers or just for decorative. Silhouettes were elongated, as you can see in this picture. This made women have a more elegant look and made them appear more slim and tall. Waistlines were cinched for a little while. However, around the 20s and 30s, waistlines were no longer cinched, creating a more functional look for all of their dresses. Moving on to 1940 to 1970. These changes were heavily impacted by World War II. According to Yale New Haven Teachers Institute, occupation in France because of the war led to many fashion houses closing. These fashion houses were places where fashion was heavily influenced, and they set standards for all of the trends at the time. And because these houses were closing, this gave women a more uniform look. For example, shoulders were padded and waistlines were now beginning to be cinched again. Because of the war, there were also many manufacturing standards when it came to producing clothes in masses. That is another reason why these dresses and other clothing had more of a uniform look. In 1959, Barbie was introduced. She was a global development that contributed to change in the fashion world. She was a big influencer of fashion because she was the first grown-up doll. So girls were able to express their own personal style for the first time because they were able to dress up their doll in any way they wanted to. According to Boucher's 20,000 Years of Fashion, miniskirts, pants cut at the calf, and shorts for public outings became popular in 1969. This was a really big change because women had never really worn shorts before, and so as you can see in my visual representation, the skirts were much shorter than they were in the previous years, and here in 1940, many collars and buttons. That was because of World War II and women were working in factories. Moving on to 1980 to today. This time period had some of the most dramatic and drastic changes. According to Glamour magazine, the 80s were known for being bold. They had shoulder pads, bright colors, and crazy patterns. And as you can see, long pants and crazy colors, stripes, knee-high socks. Hair was also starting to become much longer, and the colors were very bright and vibrant, and the cuts of all of the clothing was different than we had seen previously. Whereas just 10 years later, which is not a very long time, the 90s were known for their minimalistic style. This meant that neutral tones were very popular, and slip-like dresses were one of the biggest trends of the time period. Durmaz wrote a report called The Role of Social Media in the Fashion Industry. This talked about the impact that social media has had on fashion. For example, magazines have become less and less popular because their place has been taken by blogs, online websites, and social media sites. This has made the fashion trends much less exclusive because what's going down the runway in Paris is easily accessible right on our cell phones. And also, social media has made fashion trends become worldwide, so something popular here may be popular in another country. I have talked about all of the changes that have happened throughout the last 100 years in fashion and what has inspired these changes and how it has impacted our society. As you can see, the world around us heavily impacts fashion, and that has had a huge impact on women's roles and our society.